I'm Jane Copier, and you're listening to Happy in the Middle, a podcast for Christian women who want to make the second half of life the best half. This podcast is all about helping women to reignite their spark and step into their divine power in order to create deep and connected relationships and also find that fulfillment and satisfaction they crave. So, if you're ready to grow, join me and learn how you too can overcome guilt, resentment, disappointment, and enjoy the fruits of creating a life well lived. Let's go. Hello, gorgeous. So glad you're here today. How are you? Spring has, I think, officially arrived here in Utah. We were almost 70 degrees the other day, and I've already been out working in my yard, and it feels so good. My son helped me to take out several of our front bushes, and I cannot wait to redo and kind of update my beds. Feels like I'm just getting a good haircut, and I love making things look fresh and new. How about you? What are you up to this spring? On another note, my husband and I attended a funeral for one of his good friends from high school a few days ago. I gotta say, it made me so grateful that my husband is still here with me. His friend had some medical issues and developed a staph infection, just like my husband did. And he fought it for about 90 days before he finally passed away. And I gotta say, it was so heartbreaking to see his wife. She was just bereft, so missing him. I don't know why my husband was spared and hers wasn't. Only God knows the reasons why, right? But I tell you, I do not take a minute with my husband for granted. And, being there to celebrate his friend's life made me even more aware of the gift that it is to have him here still with me. This week, we are talking about attachment theory. It is all the buzz right now in the relationship world. So I want to break it down for you and help you to not only understand what it is and why it matters, but also kind of help you to see how it applies to you. It will give you new tools to create more peace, more love, more safety in your own relationship. And there is a lot of information to cover. So this will be a 2-part series to begin with, right? And then I will likely add more episodes in this category in the coming months. Human beings, man, we are complex creatures. So labels are never a one and done. But the way that we operate in the world can be broadly defined by many tools, right? There have been many theories going all the way back to William Went, Sigmund Freud, all of those founders of the practice of psychology. And more recently, people have used newer tools, the Enneagram, which really isn't new. It's been around for hundreds of years, but it seems to be more at the front of popular psychology these days. I really love the Enneagram. I'll probably do an episode on that in the near future. The love languages is another tool. There are many personality tests. They're all wonderful resources in helping us to understand ourselves a little bit better. But today, again, we're talking about attachment theory. And I got to say, there is really something to this work. And one of the reasons that I love all of these tools so much is because it does help us to understand ourselves and our partner better. And when we do that, we're far more able to manage our thinking, not only around ourselves, but also around our partner, right? As you all know, I firmly believe, will always believe, that it's every person's responsibility to take 100% accountability for the way that they think, the way that they feel. But in growing our capacity for compassion by learning about our partner's tendencies and why they operate the way that they do, and also those same things about ourselves, it does truly make our thought work easier. It's easier to love someone when we understand the way they're wired. It's easier to think kinder thoughts about them, that they don't do things intentionally to hurt us, that there is a reason for their behavior, right? So it can be incredibly helpful for creating more love, deeper connection, all the things that we want in our relationships. At the root of it, attachment theory is all about the safety in the nervous system. So attachment styles are not just personality traits. They are nervous system responses to perceived safety or perceived threats in our relationships. And this starts from infancy, right? When we are newly born, we as humans are able to track how quickly someone responds when we cry. We notice how long it takes for us to be fed when we're hungry. If we are warmed, if someone puts a blanket on us when we're cold, if we're picked up, if we're held, if we're cuddled when we're upset. or if we're left alone to fend for ourselves. And babies who receive the love and attention they need when they need it develop what we call secure attachment. They feel safe in the world. They experience life as a welcoming and loving place. They know they can depend on their people to care for them. And for those who do not experience the world in this way, especially in the first 3 years of life, can go on beyond that, but especially those first 3 years are super crucial. When they don't experience the world this way, it can really wreak havoc on their relationships all lifelong. This need to feel cared for is at the core of every human being's existence. And according to relationship expert Sue Johnson, she's one of the people that I cite. I've studied many of the authors of this. I'm not myself an expert in this field, but I do love this work and I do tap into many of them. So Sue Johnson's one of them. She says that the central questions inside every relationship interaction is, are you there for me? This is at the heart of how we interact, right? When the nervous system senses distance or rejection, people automatically go into protect or protection behaviors, which are very dysregulating. We don't act the way that we wish that we could hope to show up, right? This is when attachment pattern shows up most strongly. And it shows up often in the form of conflict. Whether you believe it or not, most conflict is a bid for connection, right? What might look like criticism, nagging or withdrawing, or bringing up a problem, that's often a protest or a bid for connection. So, for example, criticism might really mean, look, I'm afraid that I'm not important to you. You don't do this thing, or you don't treat me this way. It's really saying, I don't feel like I matter, like I'm important to you. Maybe when you shut down, instead of someone feeling like they just don't like you and they want to be away from you, it could mean, I feel overwhelmed. I feel unsafe. So it's a self-preservation move. There's an expert, Stan Tatkin, who did a lot of work in this area, and he emphasizes that couples often misinterpret these signals. One partner might see criticism. The other partner is actually expressing a fear of disconnection, fear of not being seen, not being cared for. And as you can imagine, attachment styles exist on a spectrum. There's no rigid boxes that we all fit in. In fact, you might see yourself in a couple of the different styles. The other important thing to note is that, two children from the very same household, raised exactly the same way by the same parents, might have completely different attachment styles. Because again, humans are complex. And there are some of us who are more sensitive toward outward stimulus than others. While one baby might be enjoying time playing alone in the crib, another might feel very anxious and very alone if not immediately attended to. We are all just different, so our outcomes might be different. So it's really important to stress that we do not need to villainize parents here or place blame when they were doing their best with the tools and the capacity that they had in the moment. I am not someone who says, yeah, look back and blame everything about your life on your parents. I just don't think that that's correct. Often I think things that we refer to as trauma are life. Like we all have problems, we all have situations that we deal with. But understanding it and learning from it and learning how to shift from the creation of those styles for us is our work. Okay. That's not our parents, unless your parent was blatantly abusive, right? I mean, certainly in those cases, it's a different situation. But what I'm talking about is normal life experience. Okay. So there's all kinds of responses to all kinds of stimulus. Some people may lean mostly secure, but become anxious when they're under stress. Others might be avoidant in romance, but very secure with their friends. I've seen this in clients too. And still others may really shift over time from depending on a partner to not wanting to depend on a partner, right? Relationships themselves can activate or they can calm our attachment patterns, just depending on our interaction with them and their own attachment style. But one of the most encouraging conclusions from attachment research that I have done is that secure attachment can be learned in adulthood. So if you fall into a certain category, it's not a death sentence. I promise you. You aren't doomed to suffer for life. We could not take a blood test and determine that, yep, you're an avoidant style. So you might as well give up. No, that's not it at all. This is absolutely a style that you can shift along with our anxiety attachment styles, right? You can shift it with a little help and some personal determination to make some change, okay? Psychologists sometimes call this earned secure attachment. That's the label for it. You can earn it through supportive relationships, through more emotional awareness, through really intentional communication. And couples literally can retrain their nervous systems to experience more connection differently. Isn't that wonderful? I think it's just the best news ever because that means that even long standing relationship patterns can become healthier and more secure over time. And that's why I believe it's so important to become familiar with this theory and apply it to your own life as needed. There are 4 attachment styles, so let's dive in. For today, we're just going to define what they are, how they come about, and how they show up in relationships. And then in next week's episode, we're going to discuss how the different attachment styles interact in relationship to one another and how to shift the dynamic to one that is more secure. So let's start by talking about secure attachment. This is the one that everybody dreams of. Really, we all want to feel secure. We all want to feel, just peaceful and relaxed in our relationship. Secure attachment develops when our caregivers are consistently responsive to babies from the time that they're born, right? They tracked that there was someone there for them, someone to hold them, someone to nourish them, someone to make them comfortable, someone emotionally available who rocked them and loved them and comforted them when they were upset. These babies felt completely supported because time and time again, day after day, this was their experience. The child learned 2 very important beliefs. Number 1, I am worthy of love. And the other one is other people are generally safe and dependable. I can rely on my people, right? And because these lucky babies, this was their experience, securely attached adults usually feel really comfortable with intimacy. They communicate openly about their needs. They trust their partner's intentions. They don't ever think that they mean to harm them, right? They handle conflict without panicking. They don't catastrophize or shut down. And they're able to find a balance between independence and closeness. They have what we call healthy relationship programming. So their nervous system expects connection to be available. They don't assume they're being abandoned or rejected when something goes wrong, and they really easily trust other people. The way this looks for someone with secure attachment is, well, let's just say they're in a couple where one partner comes home quiet and stressed, right? A securely attached partner might say, you seem a little off tonight. You want to talk about it? And if the partner says they need a little time to decompress, the secure partner thinks, great, no problem. They just need a little space. It's not a big deal at all. They don't assume rejection. They don't take it personally. And later, they reconnect naturally. It's just not a big deal. Secure partners just tend to assume goodwill, and they repair quickly after conflict. They don't drag things out. There's no need to because they just assume that their partner is doing their best. I'll give you another example. Let's call this woman Sarah. Let's say Sarah is securely attached, right? So Sarah texts her husband around 3 p.m. Hey, how was your day going? And he doesn't respond. And a couple hours later, she looks at her watch again and he still hasn't responded. So when she gets home, guess what she does? She just smiles and say, hey, busy day? And he nods and says, yeah, crazy day at work. And they hug and they move on with the evening. Inside of Sarah's mind, there wasn't a story about rejection or distance, right? Her nervous system just assumed he's busy, we're good. There's zero drama. There's no storytelling going on in her brain. She's not wondering if he's at work or if he's cheating or if he's ignoring her, right? That is secure attachment. There is trust in the connection, even when there's temporary distance. Secure partners naturally expect their relationships to be stable and supportive. They don't really know differently. And they typically attract partners who are also securely attached because when they date anxious or avoidant people, it's distressing. And they understand, like, oh, I don't really like how this feels. It feels heavy. And so they avoid it quickly, right? These special little unicorns, they do exist. But I want to say, their club is not exclusive. So don't be discouraged if this doesn't describe you. We're going to get you there and show you how to shift. So just hang in there with me. The next type of attachment style is the anxious attachment style. Sometimes it's called the preoccupied attachment, but I think anxious describes it best. According to relationship expert Thais Gibson, anxious attachment forms when caregivers for a baby or a child were loving, but also inconsistent. So sometimes they were attentive and nurturing, and other times they were distracted or overwhelmed or unavailable. For the child in this situation, this creates emotional unpredictability. So their nervous system learns, ooh, I need to stay very close to maintain connection, right? They get a little clingy. They think things like, if I'm out of sight, I will be out of mind, right? They will forget about me. I won't get the attention that I need. Adults with anxious attachment often fear abandonment because they haven't been able to count on their caregiver consistently, right? They need assurance frequently. They're always checking to make sure someone will be there for them. And it makes sense, right? They overthink texts. They worry about communication gaps. Why aren't they responding? Is it something I said, something I did? Is it my fault? What did I do? They kind of ruminate about all the possible things that they could have done wrong. People with anxious attachment feel strong emotional highs and really deep lows in relationships. When they feel cared for, they are ecstatic. It feels so, so good. It feels so nourishing and rich. But when they don't, it is brutal. It is just so painful to bear. Another trait is that they try so hard. They work nonstop to please their partner, to maintain approval, to maintain closeness. There are a lot of perfectionists in this group. Gibson explains that anxious partners often develop hyperactivation strategies. And what this means is that these people, these anxious attachers, intensify connection attempts when they feel distance. So they're calling, they're texting, they're pursuing conversations, right? They're trying to resolve conflict immediately because it's so dysregulating to feel like they're not good and whole and well with their partner. And their partners often describe them as being too needy, right? But the deepest fear of an anxious attachment style person is losing the relationship because at the core of it, they just don't feel safe alone. They don't trust their ability to take care of themselves. They do feel very needy and they will settle for less than they deserve just to preserve the relationship, to preserve that safety. So, for instance, I want you to picture a woman whose husband usually texts when he leaves work, and one day he doesn't. An anxious attachment pattern might trigger thoughts like, did I do something wrong? Is he upset with me? Why hasn't he responded? Why isn't he getting a hold of me? Is he not thinking of me? See all this spinning of thoughts going on in the brain. So by the time he gets home, she's completely dysregulated, and she might say something like, why did you ignore my texts? It feels like you don't care about me. When you don't text me, I feel like I don't matter to you, you know? And to her partner, it might sound like criticism, but the core belief beneath it is actually this fear of losing connection, fear of losing their love. So let's use the example of Emily. Let's say Emily texts her husband during the afternoon, hey, thinking of you. And then 2 hours pass and there's no reply. Well, instead of thinking, oh, he's just busy, and then going on happily with her day, like the secure attachment, Sarah, the anxious attached Emily's brain starts filling in the blanks. Oh, I said this thing this morning. I bet that was it. Oh, he's probably ignoring me because of this. Maybe he's upset at me because of this, right? And by the time he walks through the door, she's saying, why are you ignoring me? Why, what have I done? I can't believe that you're treating me this way. He feels attacked, but this is her anxiety talking, right? Underneath her words, that something softer is saying, I need reassurance. I need to know that we're okay. Sue Johnson calls this a protest or a bid for connection, like we talked about earlier. It isn't criticism. Again, it's just a fear of losing closeness. So much of that anxious attachment's worth is wrapped up in this relationship, and that is incredibly painful for them to feel forgotten or abandoned or uncared for. That is the anxious attachment style. Okay, now we're going to move on to the two avoidant attachment types. The first is the dismissive avoidant attachment. Dismissive avoidant attachment forms when caregivers were emotionally unavailable, or they were rejecting, or they were just outright dismissive of the baby's needs, right? The child in this situation learns something powerful very early. They learn, my needs will not be met, so I should not rely on other people. They also learn, it's not safe to feel my emotions. When they cry, they might be shamed, they might be disciplined for it, right? They learn how to shut their emotions down and never reveal them to other people. A lot of people mistakenly think that dismissive avoidants don't have any pain, but in reality, they have incredibly deep pain. Their pain is so deep that their brain often dissociates from it and will not let them feel it because their brain says, ooh, if I have to feel this, I could die, right? It is so deep and so big. So the brain pulls the plug on emotions. They don't experience deep emotions. They kind of walk around a little bit numb. And they don't know that this is their case, right? They don't even know that they can't access deep joy, deep love. They have no idea how blunted their emotions are. And again, this is created by emotional neglect, right? Most of the time, they don't consciously know that they were neglected. They've shut everything down so much that they think this is just how everyone operates. This is how it feels for everyone. As children, in order to protect themselves, their nervous system develops strong self-reliance. Do you know anybody like this, right? Adults with this attachment style often value their independence above everything else. They feel very uncomfortable with emotional dependence. They shut down during conflict. In fact, they avoid vulnerability at all costs, right? It is so scary to them. And they need significant personal space. Gibson says dismissive avoidants use deactivation strategies. Let's talk about what those are. These are some of the ways that the mind creates distance from intimacy. So dismissive avoidants often focus on their partner's flaws, right? They stay busy with work. They stay busy with their hobbies. They don't allow any free time to have to talk about things, right? There's never a good time to talk for a dismissive avoidant. It wouldn't matter how you bring it up or when you bring it up. There's just never a good time because that's incredibly painful to feel because they take everything as a criticism, right? So dismissive avoidants also minimize the emotional needs of their partner. They'll dismiss them or argue against them. They'll work really hard to prove that it's their partner's fault. They kind of throw the kitchen sink at them by bringing up all of their faults in order to keep the focus off of them. They withdraw when conversations get deep. The goal of their nervous system is to maintain autonomy and safety. It's how they were raised. It's what they know. So if their spouse were to approach them and say, hey, you know what? We need to talk about our relationship. This is so frightening for a dismissive avoidant. It is so difficult for their nervous system. They feel immediately overwhelmed. Their reaction might look like changing the subject, leaving the room. They might say something like, I don't know what the problem is. Everything is fine. And they shut down emotionally, right? They might even tell their partner, look, you're just being overly dramatic. What's the big deal? They often say things like, can't you just be happy? Look how good our lives are. We have a better life than 90% of the people out there. Why do you want to focus on our problems? Internally, what they're feeling is this is way too much pressure. They feel like they have to get away because remember, distance feels like emotional regulation for them. They are so used to taking care of themselves that any emotional request by their partner is incredibly annoying because to them, they think, I take care of myself. Why can't she? That's her job, not mine, right? It's not my job to make her feel good. So let's use the example of Mark. Let's say Mark comes home from work tired and overwhelmed, and his wife greets him with, Hey, can we talk tonight? Something's been bothering me. Immediately inside Mark's body, a stress alarm goes off. His nervous system thinks, oh, this is going to be intense. Or, great, now I get to hear about all the things I'm doing wrong again. And remember that deep pain we spoke about before? They will do anything to protect against feeling that. So they immediately get defensive. They say, can we not do this right now? Why can't you just be happy? Look how good our life is. Like I said before, I do all these things, but it's never enough for you. He might turn on the TV and just dismiss her by tuning out. And then, of course, his wife does feel dismissed. She feels unimportant. But what you need to understand is internally, this dismissive avoidant person, this Mark, is trying to regulate overwhelm. He's trying his best to protect his sense of self. He's not trying to reject her. That is not his plan. That is not his purpose. That is not his intention. It is what happens, but you have to know what's happening behind the scenes, right? Distance becomes the dismissive avoidance coping strategy. And that is why they pull away. Okay, let's talk about the fourth and final style. And this is the fearful avoidant. Some people call it disorganized attachment, but again, I think fearful avoidant describes it best. These are individuals who experience some sort of trauma, divorce, an alcoholic parent, a parent sick or unable to care for the kids, right? It can be a big T trauma or a little T trauma, but for some reason it causes them to lose trust in one or more of their caregivers. This is kind of a difficult style, and I would say possibly the one that's most confusing to experience in a relationship because it typically develops when childhood included both love and fear, but it wasn't ever consistent. So the caregiver may have been unpredictable or emotionally volatile, like they don't know which mom's going to show up today, happy mom or sad mom or mad mom, right? We're always kind of walking on eggshells. They could have had a parent that was just very critical, sometimes overly loving and then super critical, sometimes nurturing and also sometimes frightening, right? This lack of consistency causes fearful avoidance to adopt a belief. And that belief is, if I can't rely on my caregiver, who can I ever trust? So their core fear is betrayal. And these children learn two competing beliefs. One, I need connection, but also two, connection is dangerous. Adults with fearful avoidant attachment often experience a really strong desire for closeness. They want it. They want that. They see it and they look at it and they think it looks so nice, but they also have a tremendous fear of vulnerability. They create these push-pull relationships where sometimes they are hot and sometimes they're cold, just like their parent modeled for them, right? Sometimes they're emotional intensity and connection, and then it's followed by withdrawal. Let me pull away before someone has a chance to abandon me. They have such a difficulty trusting other people. Gibson explains this style as kind of having both anxious and avoidant programming. So someone may pursue connection intensely. Let's talk. Tell me how you feel, right? And then when their partner does respond and tell them how they feel, they get angry at their response and then they suddenly pull away. But time away, although relieving at first, becomes this really dreadful place because then they feel afraid of losing their partner. So then they go back and they try to re-engage. And this is just that classic push-pull dynamic. And when the partner of a fearful avoidant dismisses their emotions or won't listen to their concerns, the fearful avoidant person feels this deep sense of betrayal. It's on the highest level. Because if they cannot count on the one person who professes to love them the most, it is more than excruciating. It can be debilitating because it activates and confirms that deep fear of being unlovable or being unworthy of being cared for. So let's give you an example of what this looks like. Imagine someone who deeply wants closeness, but has learned to cope with the world by being independent, not needing anything from anyone. They might say, hey, why don't we spend more time together? But when their partner responds with a yes, yes, let's do that, and plans this fun weekend getaway for them, it suddenly becomes scary because the fearful avoidant experiences it as a huge risk to becoming dependent or needing their partner. And if they need their partner, that means their partner can sometimes disappoint them. And that feels horrible. Again, that sense of betrayal, not like someone's cheating or being unfaithful, but a sense of betrayal in that they are not being as loving and caring as they promised to be when you got together, right? So their brain in this situation, even though they've asked for something and the partner has said yes to it, their brain gets in the way. It goes into protective mode and it sends fearful thoughts like, what if we argue? What if it feels awkward? Maybe her insecurities start to rise and she thinks, what if he doesn't like the way I look in my swimsuit after having 4 babies? What if I get my feelings hurt? It just all feels so scary to be open, to open themselves up, to open themselves to being vulnerable, open themselves up to being abandoned again. They feel too exposed, so they pull away. And then they might make excuses like, maybe we should just cancel. I've got so much going on, right? She's so afraid of experiencing that possible rejection that as much as she wants that closeness, the risk of exposure is just too great. She might say, I just need space, or I'm not feeling well. I think I need to rest. But what she's really doing is moving to spend time alone so that she can restore her sense of control, her lack of dependence on needing her partner. And then, of course, she will worry that her partner will leave, so then she'll move close again. This push-pull dynamic is often just so confusing, so disorienting to both partners. They can't figure it out. Fearful avoidants deeply want love, but they also deeply fear vulnerability. And here's what I want to say about both avoidant types. I have so much love for these people. I am one of these people. My husband is one of these people. They're so strong. They're so resilient. They have adapted and survived such a difficult circumstance in their youth, psychologically especially. Whether you saw any sign of trauma or not, maybe it's your sister who acts this way and she was raised in the same home. What happened to her psyche is hers. Okay, so be careful not to judge people. Be careful not to criticize them for being the way that they are. These people are strong. They have adapted. They have somehow pushed forward. They keep trying, right? And as much as they appear to not need closeness, it is the thing they want the very most. But they just don't have the tools because it's something they've never really experienced before. They aren't trying to hurt you. They simply don't know a different way other than self-preservation. And again, they can make beautiful, loyal partners if you can learn how to work with them and how to create a safe space for them to explore new options for relating. So we're going to go into all of that next week, and I'll give you some really good exercises for shifting these styles. So make sure you tune in next Thursday for part 2. But let's check in with you. Do you recognize yourself or your partner in any of these descriptions? If so, please remember that this is just information. It is not a tool that you should use to attack your partner or to excuse your own behavior. Again, as your coach, my work is to enable you to take 100% responsibility for your life, for the way that you feel, the way that you show up. So use this information to bless your relationships, to bless yourself, not to throw shade or judgment on yourself or your partner. Okay. And please do me a favor and leave me a rating and review and share this episode with those in your life who you love, who need to better understand conflict and generate more love and more compassion in their marriages too. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad you're here. I can't wait for next week. It's going to be so much good information. So stay tuned and I will see you next time. Bye now. Hey, if you are ready to get unstuck and make your midlife amazing, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. And I want to invite you to join my Empty Nest Academy, where you will learn how to transform your mind, your relationships, and your life. Come free yourself of regret and disappointment and be so much happier. Listen, sis, we've got one shot at this big, beautiful life. Let's make it amazing. Go to janecopier.com, that's JaneCopier.com, and sign up today. And if you're not sure what's right for you, book a free consultation with me and we'll talk it over together. And we'll make sure to get you on the path that serves you the best. See you inside.